Hello, welcome back to the channel. In this video series, we're continuing to review the Site Planning and Design Handbook. This video is dedicated to the final chapter, that is chapter 13, and the name is Professional and Project Management Issues. So let's talk about failure. Failure sometimes is a matter of perception. One person's failure is another's success. And sometimes failure is an event. For example, the elevated walkways in the Kansas City Hyatt Regency were a successful design. The design was sound, but when the walkways failed due to the contractor's modification, it was an event. So, and the same with the bridges or other structures that can be a successful design until one day they suddenly collapse. Some failures are related to changed circumstances. All responsible designs and designers proceed on the basis of what they have learned, either firsthand or as students. There are very few truly inspired new solutions to problems, and solutions tend to be iterations of solutions that have worked in the past. Failure may occur because of the design problem or circumstance changes require new applications for familiar methods or an entirely new consideration. So, a design failure is usually divided into technical and non-technical causes. Technical causes are addressed directly in the practice or over design and safety factors. Most technical problems can be discovered in the quality assurance process or QA and QC process through repeated checking and multiple reviewers. Non-technical causes of failure may be more difficult to identify or address. The non-technical threats to project success usually fall into one or more of these categories. The first one, inadequate capitalization through design and construction and into the future. Two, regulatory resistance or apathy in the form of a lack of interest, a lack of authority, or a lack of will. Three, community resistance and image issues. Four, client infatuation or the honeymoon syndrome, in which clients proceed with a vision but without a well-defined plan or the fiscal and management discipline required. Often the client's vision is visible only to the client. And number five, designer infatuation or the Taj Mahal syndrome, in which design professionals pursue their goals without regard for project limitations. It is the role of the project manager to avoid all of these issues that can lead to failure, whether technical or non-technical. And this brings us to the next subsection of the chapter, and that is the project manager. So there is a difference between project managers and project champions. And there is a chart here in the textbook. Please go back to the textbook and review that. It's table 13. And that actually came from Harold Kurtzner. He developed this comparison chart. And here he compares how project manager is different from the project champion. So for example, project managers prefer to work in groups while project champions prefer to work individually. Then project managers are committed to organization and project champions are committed to profession. Also, project managers willing to take risks while project champions are unwilling to take risks, must test or study everything, and so on. So please review the chart. So as far as the project manager, firms are organized in many different ways, and how the project management role is organized reflects the culture of the organization. Differences also exist between private for-profit organizations and public organizations. However, several principles seem to contribute directly to the success of the project manager, and some common strengths and roles are required of project managers. So, in general, project managers are effective communicators, good problem solvers, technically knowledgeable, effective advocates, and articulate representatives of the project, the firm, and their profession. Project managers are responsible for the successful outcome of the project, and success is comprised of design quality, financial performance, and schedule compliance. Meeting these objectives requires the coordination of in house resources, subcontractors, scheduling, managing the client, estimating, establishing, and meeting budgets, and also recognizing and resolving problems in addition to site planning and design responsibilities. Let's talk about communication, and that's the project manager's primary role. The project manager is the clearinghouse for information both inside and outside of the organization. So, the scope of project management answers a few questions, such as who is the client, is there a contract, what is the objective of the project, who are the stakeholders, then, when the scope of work is determined, there are a few more questions. For example, what is the objective, what resources are needed, and so on. Then, when the project schedule is developed, how long will it take? What needs to be done first, and other questions. Then, what is the critical path? When must it be done? Who sets the pace and the standards? What regulations will affect the project? And what problems should be anticipated? So, effective communication is always a challenge. Language is not precise. People tend to hear different things, and the ambiguity of memory all work to muddle the message and the information. An effort beyond casual communication is required to be effective in this role. And the project manager must establish a record of communication from the outset of the project and maintain this practice throughout the life of the project. When we talk about meetings, they should be organized with a written agenda. Managers should control the meeting as to content and time, but be sensitive to new information that must indicate problems or unexpected concerns. All meetings should be summarized in a brief set of meeting minutes, establishing a record of formal communication and then distributed to the interested parties. Public communication requires even greater care. Public presentations require planning, and um, also when people plan and prepare for the public presentation, a few objectives need to be identified, such as what is the purpose of the presentation, what is to be accomplished, who is the audience, and so on. Project managers may also consider preparing routine project reports. These reports may not be appropriate for small or short term projects, but larger projects often benefit from periodic summaries. Also, project managers should consider a project or personal diary. The diary provides an ongoing record of decisions and contacts. Project managers can use the diary to prepare summaries, letters to the file, and similar documents. Many tools exist today to assist the project manager in managing all of these communication demands. Personal communication assistants, or PCAs, and similar devices are compatible with computers and they can provide valuable assistance to the PM. So when we talk about leadership, project managers must provide successful project by setting objectives and motivating staff to meet those objectives. But leadership style is usually fairly individualized. Working with creative, highly trained people requires that a leader be able to direct people through influence, perhaps even more than through authority. Often, a project manager is responsible for outcomes that rely on the performance of people who do not work for him or her. The project depends on the timely and precise performance of the people that work apart from one another and coordinated by a project manager who is not their supervisor. And therefore, the project manager must find an effective method of communicating and influencing them. Leadership is most effective when it acts to empower others and when followers feel that they can use their own judgment and initiative within the context outlined by the leader. Leaders must be patient, persuasive, recognize the value of followers' contribution, and be active learners. Let's talk a little bit about managing change in the organization. So, in general, there are four ways to consider the future. One is things will go on as if, as they have been, but get better. Two, things will go on as before, but get worse. Three, sometimes serendipitous and wonderful will happen and things will be great. Or four, we will think and plan to influence the future as best as we can. So designers and planners intuitively value the last view. Projecting a vision into the future is the essence of design. For example, the historian Alexander Toynbee described what he called the challenge response formula of success. When the response is equal to the challenge, the response is defined as successful, and this remains true until the challenge changes. Warren Bennis, a noted leadership researcher, observed that success is by definition the seed of failure because the challenge will inevitably change. Project managers must provide leadership for the project, but firms require innovators as well. So when we talk about the project management software, relatively inexpensive and powerful computers have made significant contributions to project management. We know that. And the contributions come at a price. However, um, many project managers find the maintenance of project information systems to be time consuming, and the efforts are focused more on measuring outcomes than on managing projects. Project management software should serve to manage projects, not just collect accounting information. So there are some good software programs that are available. There are a lot of them, and they use a high degree of integration and cross-utilization of information, allowing multiple reports from a single set of data. And project management software should be able to track project performance in terms of costs, milestones, and schedules. It should provide forecasting and cost control tools, but not limited to accounting functions or reports. Project management information systems should be designed and implemented to support project management, and so should address the needs of project managers primarily. And so since there are so many programs out there, we are not going to endorse any of them, but ultimately project management software is um, supposed to track projects. No matter how sophisticated these programs are, just tracking the projects. They cannot make decisions or they cannot solve problems. So we need to remember that. Let's talk about contracting. The formal contracts are documents that acknowledge the conditions and limits of the exchange, the nature of the value to be exchanged, and the nature of the consideration. The contract language and standard clauses commonly used by design professionals include a description of limits of liability, indemnification clauses, ownership of drawings and reports, and payment. Some contracts include the schedule and specific scope of work as well, while other contracts refer to documents that contain this information. So typically contracts for design services include a clause that clearly states that the firm makes no warranty of its work, implied or otherwise. and that's the standard of care. And that is the degree of care generally observed by other design professional under similar circumstances. Let's talk about professional liability. Risk management begins with knowing what you are being paid to do and what client expectations are. One of the most important aspects of formal written contracts is the exercise that is necessary to describe the work and the outcomes. Firms should never assume greater responsibility than they are contracted for and should not contract for work that they are unprepared for. Professional liability insurance, sometimes called E&O insurance or errors and omissions, uh, is purchased to protect firms and individuals from suits and costs arising from those omissions, but it may not address negligence, for example. Protecting the firm from claims is generally referred to as risk management. Some providers of E&O insurance provide training for staff to learn about risk management and to recognize problems while they are still manageable. So there are some basic principles of risk management, and they're fairly straightforward, but they're often found to be difficult to practice. So, for example, you need to know what you are being paid to do. Then do not assume greater responsibility that you have contracted for. Formally recognize changes in the scope of work. React immediately to problems that may be potential claims and others. So, professionals with a good relationship with other clients are often called upon to assist the client when trouble arises. Occasionally, the professional may be asked to assume a management role in construction activities. Such opportunities may be exciting and demonstrate the firm's value to the client, but the professional may be moving from a professional relationship to a contractor relationship in terms of liability. Um, the most difficult part of risk management is to recognize and react to the earliest warning signs of a problem. This is difficult because few of us enjoy dealing with problems, especially if they result from our decisions. The fact of the matter is that problems identified and addressed early are most likely not to progress to insurance claims or lawsuits. If nothing else, costs are contained by early action. So let's talk about problem solving. And this is a critical project management skill. And also, there are a few strategies that can be applied. One is to address causes of a problem, not merely the symptoms. Then, the earlier the problem is addressed, the less impact it will have. Then, problems are solved quicker and better in an environment of openness and communication. And the final statement is to understand the scope of the problem in the context of the project. And we know that it's not always easy to identify the causes of problems. They may be rooted in anything from materials to management, from poor design to poor training, and other problems of communication. The project manager owns the problem without regard to its cause, but understanding and addressing the cause is critical to success. So let's talk about QA in the design process. QA, or quality assurance, is a critical element of the design and planning process, but it remains an elusive and ambiguous objective. Define quality is perhaps more difficult than achieving it. And also, there are many approaches to quality assurance and many softwares they can do that. So quality is not accomplished through checklists, though for some people checklists are helpful. And Pushing responsibility down to the lowest level of the organization does not achieve quality if the staff is unqualified or the project is poorly defined. So it's always the role of the project manager to actually communicate that to the leadership team. So when we talk about getting paid, that can be a challenge in the project as well. Unpaid invoices are important warning signs that every project manager should be aware of. A client who is slow to pay may be unhappy with some aspect of the firm's performance, may be underfinanced, or be re-evaluating the project. The project manager must determine why the invoices are not paid and what, if anything, to do about that. So once a problem is identified, it's critical that some action be taken in fairly short manner. In many cases, the quick and effective response straightens the relationship between client and the professional. Dealing with unpaid invoices is among the least favorite tasks for many project managers, but they still have to do that. And early and frequent contact with clients is always the best way to ensure payment or to identify a problem with a client. So let's talk about the going green, the design in the design practice. So design professionals are not the only party in the design process, but they are best suited to educating and bringing change to the built environment. Firms engaged in land planning and design should seek opportunities to provide access to public transit and create linking pedestrian corridors and bicycle paths. The character of communities is more that it is just shown on the picture. It's ultimately how they work, and transportation is critical feature for the modern community. Design professionals should encourage zoning ordinances to permit mixed use development so homeowners can walk to the store, school, or work. It is necessary to advocate for these changes when not representing the interest of a client, so the motivation is clearly the quality of the design. Buildings should be situated to maximize energy efficiency, allow for pedestrian access, and reduce development impacts. The cost implications are generally favorable because of narrower and shorter roads and reduced length of utilities. Also, plans should incorporate the protection of trees and topsoil during site work. When backfilling foundation or grading around the building, specs should require that construction debris be removed rather than buried. Also, in addition to introducing more green design practices to the site, firms should consider finding ways to walk the walk and improve the environmental performance of their own businesses. Reducing the environmental impact of the firm contributes to the firm's credibility and serves as a model for other firms. Simple strategies such as the type of vehicle used in the company fleet or encouraging employee carpooling and the use of mass transit are important steps. Use of recycled paper or rebuilt office equipment and using recycled materials in office furniture and decorating speaks volumes to clients and the public. The greening of design and planning becomes more of a reality as time passes, and this is probably the reflection of a wider recognition in our society of the importance of responsible design. But it's also the result of many individuals moving toward greener design with each new project and opportunity. So let's move to the final subsection of the chapter that is dealing with the public. So the work of site design professionals is always under scrutiny and subject to change and approval by non-professionals. This can cause frustration due to required changes to plans that contribute nothing to the project or undermine the design in some fashion. So, for example, presentations, um, uh, when we talk about that, preparation is the key to every presentation. And when you're preparing, you need to articulate a clear and concise objective and build your presentation around that as a project manager. So when you are preparing for the presentation, state an objective. And once it's done, the next step is to understand to whom the presentation is being made. In a public meeting, is the presentation being made to the members of the community or to the members of the planning commission? So you need to know the audience, for example. Also, you need to know how much time is allotted to your presentation and plan to end early. By by intentional running short, you will allow time for the Q&A section, and they always overrun. So if you are going to do the visual aids, plan them to support your presentation, not to replace or compete with that. So also, do not try to memorize the presentation. Use that as the notes, as a prompt, and that will definitely guide you. But if you're using equipment during your presentation, arrive early to set it up and test it. So those are like some common sense practices that are good for every project manager. So when we talk about the presentation itself, you need to introduce yourself, then demonstrate an open and objective approach to your subject, and then also you can use a pause to draw attention to an important point. Then also make eye contact. Also, you need to interact with the audience and keep their attention. So you may open the presentation by stating your objective and what you want them to know. Also, questions, when they are asked, be sure to listen and also acknowledge the question somehow and provide a direct answer to that. Um, Keep track of your time. That's also important, and try to avoid the use of acronyms because your audience may not be aware of that. Also, when you close the presentation, it's better to leave it to leave out part of the presentation that than not to deliver your closing. So it's very important to also answer the questions. And also, there is another concept, not in my backyard, which unfortunately became a common experience of developers and site professionals. So, and it's called NIMBY, not in my backyard. The typical NIMBY reaction is based on the community's reaction to the project's impact on property values. So, there's a number of studies showing that, and also um, basically, who cares, right? That's the what the NIMBY effect is. And to deal with the expected NIMBY reaction, designers should consider how the project manager might be cited or prevented, and offer three approaches to minimize the impacts. Most land use decisions are ultimately local decision, and this consideration fails to recognize the regional nature of many NIMBYs. And these considerations may be in the form of tax relief, host fees, or some other offsetting value that neutralize the NIMBY for the locally affected population, not that gives the benefit to the larger population to be served. So the adverse effect is to actually motivate those people who are against the project. So that was it for chapter 13, and this wraps up our textbook review. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in other videos.